The golden age of Hollywood is often remembered for its glamour, its glittering premieres, and its carefully crafted studio stars. But behind the velvet curtains of the studio system lay a rigid culture built on hierarchy and gender inequality. The entire industry of the 1920s through the 1950s was largely run by men who saw actresses as commodities to be marketed, controlled, and discarded once they aged out of the ingenue roles. Within that system, some leading men were open in their dismissive or patronizing attitudes toward women. This video examines a handful of major figures whose own words or behaviors reflected the sexism that pervaded Hollywood, showing how their attitudes both reflected and reinforced the gender imbalance of the time. John Wayne, the outspoken traditionalist. John Wayne, the ultimate symbol of rugged American masculinity, built his career playing soldiers, cowboys, and stoic men of action. In interviews throughout his career, he repeatedly espoused traditional gender roles and expressed disdain for feminist ideas. In a now infamous 1971 Playboy interview, Wayne openly criticized the women's liberation movement, calling it unnecessary and mocking the idea of women entering traditionally male occupations. While his comments came after the strict studio system era, his career and persona were forged in the Golden Age, and his public statements reflected an older Hollywood worldview where women were expected to stay in their place. Clark Gable, King of Hollywood with a double standard. Clark Gable was known as the King of Hollywood and starred opposite virtually every major leading lady of his time. Yet biographers have documented that Gable could be dismissive and patronizing toward his female co-stars. He was reported to have made jokes about their looks, dismissed their input on set, and bragged about his sexual conquests. In a culture where the studios tolerated male stars' behavior but punished women for far less, Gable's attitude embodied a double standard that was accepted and even celebrated in the press. His off-screen comments about women knowing their place became part of the whispered lore of old Hollywood gossip columns. Errol Flynn, the Playboy persona. Errol Flynn's public image was that of a charming swashbuckler, but he also cultivated a notorious off-screen reputation. He openly boasted about his sexual exploits with women, including his affairs with much younger partners, and wrote about them in his memoir, My Wicked, Wicked Ways. Flynn treated his liaisons as trophies and bragged about them in interviews, contributing to a culture in which women were reduced to objects of conquest, while the press at the time framed it as rakish charm. In today's language, it reads as a textbook case of open sexism and entitlement. Jerry Lewis. Although better known for his later comedy work, Jerry Lewis began his rise in the studio era and became a powerful entertainer by the 1950s. In multiple interviews, including one with The Hollywood Reporter in the 1990s reflecting back on his career, Lewis bluntly stated that he did not think women belonged in comedy, insisting that he didn't like any women comedians and thought they were unfunny. These were not offhand remarks. He repeated the sentiment several times over decades. His comments reflected a widespread attitude in the entertainment business that comedy was a man's domain and that women should be relegated to decorative or supporting roles. Alfred Hitchcock, the director's control. While primarily a director rather than an actor, Alfred Hitchcock was one of the most powerful figures of the Golden Age. His treatment of actresses such as Tippi Hedren has been documented by Hedren herself in interviews and memoirs. Hitchcock's controlling behavior, unwanted advances, and deliberate humiliation of female performers went far beyond the norms of a demanding director. His conduct, and the way studios allowed it to continue, reveals how even behind the camera, the culture of old Hollywood was steeped in sexism and exploitation. It's important to remember that these men operated within an industry built on gender inequality. The studio system controlled an actress's contract, image, and even her personal relationships, often assigning her to publicity dates or marriages for marketing purposes. male stars could be openly sexist without fear of losing their careers, while women were punished harshly for defying studio rules. The examples of John Wayne, Clark Gable, Errol Flynn, Jerry Lewis, and Alfred Hitchcock show not isolated incidents, but a larger pattern of entrenched sexism.